Hey guys, welcome back to part 4 of ELA and reading assignments for this week. Okay, hi guys, I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you have gotten to see all the review videos this week. This has been a review for reading and math and basically all language skills. Okay, I uploaded some materials for you for this lesson. It says reading part 4 materials. And if you got to print them out or look at them, you see that there's a PDF there that's a story that should be familiar to you. We read it just a few weeks ago called The Ugly Duckling. This version is by Hans Christian Andersen. Now, remember when we were using the story before, we were contrasting with the Venn diagram, the ugly duckling story to the ugly truckling story. They basically had the same meaning at the end, okay? Yesterday we talked about theme and the lesson learned in a story. This one really has a lesson kind of in itself today. If you have the story and would like to go ahead and read with us, you can read it silently or you can pause the video and read it and then come back. That would be a great thing to do. Miss Gillard's going to start with the ugly duckling, okay? It was a beautiful spring morning on a small farm near the woods. In a cool, shaded corner, a duck built a warm nest to sit on her 4 precious eggs. Strangely, one of the eggs was much larger than the rest. Now, while we read the story, Miss Gillard has I have some comprehension questions for you that are going to help you with the activity that we're going to look at today, okay? So let's look at paragraph 1 together. What season does this story take place? It takes place in spring. Very good. It says it was a beautiful spring morning on a small farm near the woods. Okay, remember that. We're going to need that later. Okay, it says that in the cool, shaded corner, a duck built a warm nest for her to sit on her 4 precious eggs. So if I ask you the question, where did the mother duck build her nest? What would you say? In a cool, shaded corner. Good. How many eggs does the mother lay? It also told us that in that paragraph. If you are underlining the text as we go, you can underline these details that we're giving you today, okay? How many eggs did she lay? 4. Very good. Okay. Now, what was one thing in paragraph 1 that was different about the eggs? It says out of the 4, one was a little different. Did you catch that? One was larger than the rest. To her excitement, the eggs started to rumble and crack. 1, 2, 3 eggs popped open, and 3 little ducklings poked their heads into the world. At the same time, the biggest egg began to crack as well. And to the mother's surprise, a big gray duckling stumbled out of the egg. Although he was different and not as cute as the other ducklings, she loved him nonetheless. Let's go ahead and take some questions from this paragraph. What was different about the gray duckling? Okay, we'll make a quick Venn diagram to talk about the ducklings. There was 4 total. There was 3 who looked the same, and there was 1 who was different. Remember this compare and contrast? The compare part we'll put in the middle. The contrast parts we'll put on the side. What's something about the gray duckling that's different? Okay, well, its color, right? Okay, its color is gray. It says, okay. It already says that what about the size? He was larger than the rest, okay? Is there anything that is similar comparatively about both of them? How can we compare? They all came out of eggs, right? So that would be in the center, okay? It says, although he was not as cute as the other ducklings, she loved him nonetheless. So all 4 eggs were loved by who? Mom, okay? So we can tell that one adjective Mom uses to describe the others is cute. We're on paragraph 3. The next day, the duck introduced her family to the other animals on the farm. Seeing the strange gray duckling, the pig, mallard, and mouse all burst out laughing. This poor duckling bowed his head in shame. He felt like he did not belong. That night, as the family slept near the barn, the gray duckling decided to leave to find people that liked him for who he was. Is there something we can add to our diagram? Okay. This one decides to leave the family. A couple of questions now, okay? Why did the gray duck decide to leave the family? Did you catch that in the paragraph? If you're looking along with me, we're in paragraph 3. Why did the little gray duckling decide to leave his family? It says he decided to leave to find people that liked him for who he was. Now we're on paragraph 4. Before long, he ran into a kind old woman, her rooster, and her cat. She invited him into her home, and they all treated him like family. Over time, the little gray duckling began to grow. Although he was happy, he always felt something was missing. One day, as he stared out on the pond, he saw a family of beautiful swans wading in the cool breeze. He wanted to go swimming with them. As he approached the pond, he saw his reflection, okay? So what he looked like for the first time. The ugly duckling had grown into a beautiful swan. From below, the cat and rooster happily watched their friend fly high in the sky, and finally, the gray little duckling had found himself. Now, as you read that story, how did the ugly duckling find himself? And what does that mean? Okay, it states in the last paragraph there, okay, it states that he saw a family of swans wading out in the cool breeze, and he felt the urge to go and do what? Swim. Okay, he went out to the new family. He found people that he felt comfortable with, right? What does that mean to find himself? As he watched, it says they watched him and he had found himself. Do you know what that means? He found where he belonged. So in the end, the 3 ducklings felt like they belonged with their mother, right? They looked like mother. They acted like mother. They were cute like mother. But the other duckling just did not feel like the rest. Okay, he was loved. He did come from an egg, but he was different. He had to go find himself to feel where he really did belong. Now that I've asked you some comprehension questions on the story, let's look at a few things together, okay? Today, in the lesson, I want to talk about building the story part so that you can have the skill of retelling a story. Miss Gaylord has got this diagram. You see this? These are my donuts, okay? I want you to build me a story and look at the parts that we will need to look at, okay? All right, so the first thing, the building block or the foundation for my donuts is going to be this, okay? We need to know the topic. Okay, what will we write about today? I put the material up so that you could see what we were writing about, okay? If I have to ask you to retell a story, the topic was what? That would be the building block. That would be called the ugly duckling, right? When you know what you're writing about, then you're able to organize your thoughts, right? So we're writing about this story, the ugly duckling. Now, all good pieces of writing need a topic sentence. Okay, so let's gather from what we learned some of these details of the story to find a good topic sentence, okay? Can you think of one about the ugly duckling? Okay, go ahead and begin thinking of that. If you look back at the story, if you have your materials there, you can see it starts with paragraph 1. It starts with the setting. It was a beautiful spring morning on a small farm near the woods. In a cool, shaded corner, a duck built a warm nest to sit on her 4 precious eggs. Strangely, one of the eggs was much larger than the rest. So as you tell your story, you're going to need some parts. You've got your topic, okay? That's the building block of our story. You're going to need to know what the setting is. What is the setting of a story? A setting. When and where the story takes place, okay? All right, so we have our topic sentence. We mention our setting, okay, in the next part of our paper. Let's go back and look at the story to see if we can find the setting, okay? Let's see what it says. It was on a small farm near the woods. Okay, that's the where the story took place. In a little bit more of a detail, it says in a cool shaded corner, a duck built a warm nest. Now, it's okay for you just to say on a small farm or on a farm. That's the setting of this story. When you go to retell the story, you need to know the topic that you're writing about using a topic sentence. You need to know the setting, the place, when and where the story takes place, okay? The next part of the story is your next donut, which is going to be, you need to introduce your characters. Who would you say are the main characters of this story? Of course, you know the main character is who? The ugly duckling. Okay, we're here on characters. The ugly duckling was gray. It was bigger than all the rest. It was not cute. It was ugly, and it was different. As you describe your character, you can mention all those details as well. Who are some of the other characters besides the big, gray, ugly duckling? Mother duckling and his siblings, right? You could just say the other ducklings, okay? These are the characters in your story. Remember that in a story, any good story, there is something called a problem. Here's your next donut, okay? Your problem in the story. Did the ugly duckling have a problem? He sure did. What was the problem? What was the problem of the ugly duckling? Okay. The ugly duckling's problem was that he was not like the other ducklings, right? How do you know he wasn't like the other ducklings? You can tell by the differences in the ducklings, right? We listed these on the contrast part. The color was gray. He was larger than all the rest. Okay? The problem is he doesn't feel at home. He doesn't feel at home. And so the problem is that the duckling has to do what? He leaves. Okay? The duckling leaves his family to go and find himself. Okay? So every problem is also written in a good story. Now, the last part of the donut, I put it on top. Do you know what it is? The solution. In this story, can you tell me what was the solution? The duckling had to leave his family, right? Where did the duckling go? Let's go back to the story to figure out where the duckling went. It says, before long, he ran into a kind old woman, her rooster, and her cat. She invited him into her home, and they all treated him like family. Over time, though, the little duckling began to grow, and although he was happy, he always felt something was missing. The solution comes in the last paragraph. Usually in a good story, the solution comes to the end. Another word for a solution would be the ending of a story. Do you remember the story part that we call the ending? The conclusion, right? Okay. It says in the conclusion that he saw on the lake what? A family of swans, beautiful swans. And he felt the urge to go swimming, right? It says, then he saw his reflection in the pond and he looked like one of these swans. The ugly duckling had grown to a beautiful swan. He had found himself. Now that we have all the parts to our story, can we retell the story together? Okay, so at the bottom, what did we say was the bottom part? The topic of the paper or the paragraph. This one happens to be the topic of the story. Okay, can you tell what happens from the beginning of the story of the ugly duckling? Then you need to mention the what? The setting. Very good. Okay, after you've mentioned the setting, you tell who are the characters. Very good. In the story, in a good story, there's always a problem. But also in a good story, there's also the best part. We save the best for last, and it's called the solution. Very good, okay? And you can now remember your parts of retelling a story. Now, we talked about several things. Let's recap what we talked about. First of all, Miss Gillard read the story with you. I want you to go back and read it for fluency. I want you to go back and reread the story several times, even for several days. By day 2, 3, 4, you should be reading fluently by the end of the story by yourself. That's what you need to do is practice, okay? Then Miss Gaylord asked you some comprehension questions about the story. Thirdly, we made a Venn diagram to compare and contrast the different characters. Then we went over how to retell a story. Okay. And lastly, we talked about a conclusion, the ending of a story. Now, if you were to continue this story and continue another paragraph, what would you say would have happened to the ugly duckling that's now a swan? Okay, you could start a new part of the paragraph or story, and you can tell me what happens to the swan. Here's where you get to make up your part of the story. As the swan finds a new family, what happens to the swan? Does he have another adventure? Does he live happily ever after? And that's also a fun thing to do after you complete a story. I hope that you have had time to look at the story parts that Miss Gaylord attached to the Google Classroom. There's a beginning, middle, and end, okay? And then you had to read the story of how the tiger got its stripes. And your job was to type beginning, middle, and end, just a couple of sentences, and email it to Mrs. Gaylord. I have not received that from you yet, okay? So continue to work on those things. I hope that you're enjoying this. This is the last lesson in this week. And then next week, you have one more week to finish out the second grade. Thank you for listening and thank you for joining my class. Okay. And I will see you next time. Goodbye.